Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So in this video, we are going to be talking about how it is that your fear and anxiety is actually stimulating the rich elitists that are out there. Now, most of the time when you hear the economist speaking or you think about some of the things that are being talked about out there on the mainstream media, the general question that you hear from a lot of people is, how is it that anybody is supposed to be making it nowadays? And I think a lot of times the people who are saying this or hearing it or discussing this have this expectation that the politicians are going to do something to try and alleviate their problem. Like 80% of the problem, feel the suffering of a daily day or their average daily job not being enough to make it through the end of the month, to pay the bills, to acquire the things in life in which that they felt would be somewhat normal to the American dream, and yet it seems harder and harder to acquire. And they keep asking the question, what is it that the politicians are going to do, or what is it that everybody is going to do and try and making it or try to make it? And I think to myself, I don't know what it is that anybody can do out there to try and fix the situation to make it better. Recognizing what it is that's taking place then gives you the best opportunity to position yourself to deal with it. But not a lot of people are going to recognize it for what it really is. And now understanding the underlying economic forces, the Cantillon effect, the bullwhip effect, Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma, these things help in understanding what is happening, but it doesn't necessarily give you the appropriate view in what it is that you need to see in order to conduct yourself in the most appropriate fashion. That part is very unique to what it is that you have internalized as far as the information that you are receiving. Now, I've tried to share so many times on this channel how it is that the Federal Reserve and the central banking system is using their words more than their actions to guide the markets. They want you to be afraid. They want you to live in fear, anxiety, and doubt. By living in fear, anxiety, and doubt, they can then use their words with more power to impact the economy, and it totally works. We are seeing and witnessing it right here, right now. When you think about all the expectations coming from the markets, coming from the administration, coming from all the people who are listening out there about the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates, the big anticipation is when the Fed cuts, it's going to make mortgage rates cheaper. The expectation of it does. The reality doesn't. Now, this is the part that I think a lot of times people have tried to make it more systematic than it really is. When the Fed cuts, interest rates go down. No, that's not exactly the case. We witness it happening in different forms. When the Fed threatens to cut interest rates, it does bring interest rates down. But when the Fed actually cuts Fed funds rates, it takes 6 months to a year before that interest rate adjustment actually impacts the economy. But the people's perception is instantaneous. So you can adjust interest rates with the expectations of the market. You don't have to actually physically do anything. The Fed doesn't have to move. They have to put the belief out there that they will. When they put that belief out there, we actually see the impact to the economy. This is what I have been trying to share and explain for years on this channel, that when you have elevated inflation expectation, it has a real market impact. When you have an elevated inflation expectation based on credible threats of tariffs or supply chain breakdowns or COVID or recession or all kinds of credible threats that are out there, when this elevates your inflation expectation, it does something very unique. And that is it raises the neutral interest rate. And that is something that not a lot of people discuss. I've tried to focus on it so much on this channel that people say, dude, can you come up with anything else? And I say, is there anybody else who is discussing that? Because if they are not, those people are missing it. They are missing what it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do. They are missing how it is really impacting the economy. And they are missing the fact that if they have elevated inflation expectations that is pushing the neutral interest rate higher, they are actually stimulating the rich. See, when you raise the inflation expectation, you raise that neutral interest rate, the neutral interest rate makes it ever closer to the Fed funds rate. which is making the economy less restricted. This benefits the top 20% of people. Why does it benefit the top 20% of people? Because those are the people who hold the assets. If you hold assets that have a return that is higher because of the elevated interest rates, that gives them more purchasing power. If that purchasing power is being delivered into an economy that has far less inflation than people realized, the inflation expectation is way up here, but the actual inflation is fairly low. Not necessarily as good as people want it to be, but moderately above 2%, even at 3%, is really not excessive inflation. I mean, I guess somebody could have the opinion that any inflation is excessive, but when the Federal Reserve is targeting 2% and they're slightly above 2%, that to me is not out of line with what it is that the Federal Reserve is achieving or attempting to achieve, which is an inflation that averages 2% over time. They want long-term inflation expectations locked in at 2%. Now, understanding that if you have elevated inflation expectation that raises the neutral interest rate, makes the economy far less restricted, especially for those who have assets, that is getting a return on higher interest rates, being able to deploy that into the economy with a lesser inflation than anybody realized, how do you think that that's going to look for the consumer? It's going to show consuming doing very well. But it's not the consuming of the 80%, it's the consumption of the top 20% that are doing it. The top 10% in the 90s did something around 35% of the consumption. Now they do better than 50. They're doing closer to 50. 50% of the consumption. If you think if 10% of the people, the top 10%, are doing 50% of the consumption, what do you suppose the next 10% are going to be doing? Like if the top 10% do 50%, the next 10% after that would probably be doing around 50% of the remaining consumption. That puts the top 20% of the people doing somewhere around 70 to 75% of the consumption that is out there. The bottom 80% are simply insignificant to it. Once we recognize that, it makes a whole lot more sense on why it is that the Federal Reserve is conducting themselves the way they are. See, most of the time people say, well, the Federal Reserve is not going to, or what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing is causing pain and suffering and misery for 80% of the people. And I'm thinking to myself, that's because the 80% of the people are not the focus. They're not the focus. See, we live in a consumer-based economy. Debtor consumer-based economy, meaning that we have to go into ever-increasing amounts of debt issuance, and we have to have ever-increasing amounts of consumption taking place within this country. The moment that those two reverse, the collapse begins. The recessionary pressures, the depressions, the problems that we face, all that starts to take place. The moment that we cut back on debt issuance and we cut back on consuming. Now, when it comes to debt issuance and it comes to consuming, when you think about the government and their debt issuance, they have just now, let me bring this up so I get the numbers accurate here. Debt to foreign holders just reached a record high. Let me just bring this up here real quick. Okay. So foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury surged to an all-time high. This is an article coming out of Reuters just a few days ago, right? It says this is coming September 18th. Foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury rose to an all-time peak in July. Data from the Treasury Department showed on Thursday hitting record highs for a third straight month, led by gains in holdings from Japan and the United Kingdom. So as everybody's focused in on China dumping out U.S. Treasury, saying, oh man, everybody's getting out of the U.S. Treasury debt, I'm thinking, no, they're not. Some people might be getting out of U.S. Treasury debt, and they're not getting out because they don't like the dollar. They're getting out because they have dollar-denominated debt that is coming due, and the fastest way to get dollars to pay your debts is to sell the U.S. Treasuries. U.S. Treasuries are the deepest, most liquid market in the entire world. If you want cash, sell Treasuries, instantaneous to cash. Those people who have dollar denominated debt, meaning they wrote out a debt that is due in dollars, it doesn't have anything to do with the United States. They didn't sell that debt to the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with our corporations, doesn't have anything to do with our banking system, doesn't have anything to do with the United States in any way, shape, or form, except that these foreign entities wrote a debt that is due in dollars. They put that debt out there into the system, and when that debt comes due, the person who issued it, like China, like Brazil, like any other of these BRICS nations who wrote out debts that are due in dollars, need to acquire dollars to pay those debts back. If they do not have enough business transactions to acquire the dollars they need, they will sell their U.S. Treasury debts to get the dollars to pay the debt, to pay their dollar-denominated debt. So when I think about foreign holders of U.S. Treasury debts being higher today than at any other time in history, that is the debt issuance. The consuming is being done by the top 20% of people. 80% of the people here in the United States are not significant to that. They're not significant to that. What makes you significant is the taxes you pay and the burgers and beers that you serve. That's the impact that you have, right? And I know I'm one of them. I work retail myself. I'm not trying to belittle the average everyday working individual who has an honest day job. What I am trying to share with you is that these honest day jobs, these good jobs, they don't do it anymore because we are no longer significant to the economy. The economy is debtor-based, consumer-based. We do not take out enough debt. We are debt saturated. We cannot possibly stimulate the economy by going out there and borrowing money. We just don't have the capabilities of doing it. And we don't earn enough at our day jobs to go out there and consume enough. We are out of the game. The faster we recognize that, the better that we can position ourselves to deal with that. Most people will be heartbroken when they hear this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I'm not going to explain that there is some way of saving this system, saving the people, voting for the right theory, the right politician. None of that is going to take place. To understand that the underlying economic forces that are playing out right now are evident when you look at these articles, when you just read and see some of the conditions that people are now facing, and you look through history, it becomes very easy to determine that this is not something that you can reverse. Those who wish and hope and pray and dream for a reversal to this system, to this idea, are really not incorporating or internalizing the underlying economic forces. They are literally going blind. All right. 13 minutes into a nice little rant there. What are you guys talking about? Will states ever be legal? Not for a while, as reports of raped on normal meds versus weed, transfer cross-contaminated clean zones. Wow. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, but that was kind of out there a little bit. All right. Yep, go to a casino, no more comps. Why? Because they don't care or have to. People are addicted to the slots. They don't have to because people are addicted to slots. They really are. You know, that's something that I have found a lot of times is people who are addicted to gambling. I find that those people are generally deep in debt. They don't really have a whole lot of like monthly income. They have expenses that are beyond what it is that they bring in, and it's almost as if like winning this gambling game will somehow alleviate the problems that they now face. And I think, well, even if you won, you're probably just going to win back the money that you have already dumped into it. And even if you did win a significant amount, because of the mental condition that most people are in who are suffering that sort of financial state, once they get that money, it will probably not be used wisely, but get like blown out there on good times or whatever. And that's the unfortunateness that I see. Like, I don't necessarily recognize people gambling as truly enjoying the fun of the game, right? Like, to me, I'm like, well, if you're just having fun then why don't you play video games? That way you don't have to dump money into it. You can buy the video game just once and have fun, right? But no, it's something about the money itself, winning the money, right? Getting the money. That's what gives them the fun and the pleasure behind it. It's not just fun, it's an addiction to that money. It's like that feeling, getting the money. And to me, I'm like, well, if that's the feeling that you have, most likely it's not going to work out very well, right? It's like chasing the money, or something. Like you got to do something, like in order to get a decent amount of, like, to me, in order to have some sort of decency come back into your life, you have to be helpful and useful. Like if you're helpful and useful, then you get a return for that. But if the return came from like, I don't know, like, pleasure seeking or something, then most likely it's going to be short lived and it isn't going to benefit you very much. All right, gambling is for folks who don't understand math. Professor John Paul's math professor, Temple University. Yeah. My great-grandfather was a gambler and lost the house after quitting alcohol. My great-grandma always wished he just kept drinking. Oh, because he quit drinking and started gambling? Is that what happened? All right, too many professional sports bettors. People should learn the difference between wagering and investing. Yeah, and see, this is what I find very funny is that I will have people like, I'll say, hey, man, you should try and consider getting into the stock market or doing something else, position your money so that it has some sort of return. And people are like, oh, man, I don't like gambling in the stock market. And then they'll go out and blow a bunch of money at the bar. And I'm thinking, well, you just spent 50, 60 bucks at the bar, guaranteed no return, right? Zero return on your investment. And then say, oh, that's just gambling when you put your money in the stock market. And I'm thinking, what is it you're getting by throwing it through steaks and beers out of the bar? Like, I mean, I don't know where the return on investment comes. I can say, hey, man, I've worked really hard. I put some money away. I've got these investments going. And I have a little bit of extra, the money beyond the money I'm already making, that little bit of extra, and say, hey, I really want to hang out down at the bar, enjoy some beers and some conversation and eat a steak and really enjoy that. And I'm going to go out there and dedicate some time and money to that pleasurable experience because of all the hard work I've done. But to somebody who's saying, oh no, man, put this into gambling? No, 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 no. That's not stock market thing. No, 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 no. Can I get a beer and a steak? Thanks. Yeah, crazy, man. I don't know what you're doing with that money, but man, that's nuts. Yeah, medium rare. Yeah. Like, okay, well, I guess it's all a mindset. Yeah. All right. As a libertarian, what do you think about the political environment under Trump? It seems to be the opposite for sure. What about the government $8 billion investment on failed chip company Intel? Well, I mean, I don't know how many people were listening to the Uneducated Economist when they were doing that investment, saying, hey, we're going to bring all this chip manufacturing back. And I'm saying, does anybody listen to the Cantillon effect? Because that ain't happening. I don't care how much money you put into it, you're never going to be able to produce chips, anything here cheaper than you can produce it someplace else. Now, if we have some sort of technology that somebody else doesn't have that we get to take advantage of for the short little time that we got it, okay, well, maybe then, but eventually that's going to get let loose and they're going to figure out how to do it too, and they're going to be able to make it cheaper than we can do it. There's literally nothing we can do to bring manufacturing back to this country. The only thing that can happen is to lower the standard of living of the people who would be working that manufacturing. If you can lower the standard of living of those people to match that of another nation out there, then you would have some competition. You would be able to compete, right? But we can't compete. I've said it before. You're never going to be able to compete against somebody who's sleeping on the ground. And I thought it was pretty funny how somebody comments back saying, oh, no, I've been to the factories in China. They don't sleep on the ground. They sleep on bunks. And I'm like, whatever. Same thing, right? It's the fact that these people are living in very cheap conditions in order to be able to manufacture as cheap as they do. And the moment that changes, that they don't live and have those cheap conditions and they have more extravagant, higher standard of living conditions, then they would not be able to compete against some other nation out there. The United States will not do that. we will not reduce our standard of living to become competitive. If we are forced into it, that's another story, right? Like the collapse of the economy destroys everybody's living standards. We're all living on the dirt again. And then maybe we might be able to compete against the foreign producers out there. But at that point, most likely it's not going to happen because we are the consumer. We are not the manufacturer. We consume. We consume stuff and export money. It's Triffin's dilemma. This is something that was noticed and talked about and theorized way back in the 60s. They recognized it then that if the United States is going to be the custodian of the world reserve currency, then they have to be able to provide the world with that currency. Whether it's a decision made or the demand of the people of the world itself saying we need dollars to fulfill our dollar denominated debts and to do all these transactions, that causes that in that situation where the nations of the world and the people of the world who have decided that they are going to be using dollars to do the transaction and written dollar denominated debt, they are going to demand dollars in order to fulfill that, to fulfill the debt, to fulfill the transactions. In order to get those dollars out there to the people of the world, the Federal Reserve has to figure out a way to print up the money and not send the United States on an unsustainable debt path. Get the money produced, right? Get the money out there, and then it needs to move over to these nations. How do you get it to the nations? Right? You buy their stuff. So you have to consume and export dollars. This is Triffin's dilemma. Get the dollars out there. Now the dollars can chase the goods and services that are out there to perform the transactions, and it can pay off the dollar-denominated debt that exists out there that didn't have anything to do with the United States. This is a major problem not only for the United States, but for the Federal Reserve, is the dollar demand that is outside of the United States, forcing the Federal Reserve to then print up money to meet that demand to keep the dollar from strengthening and destroying what little exports we do have here in the United States. And in order to create that dollar liquidity in abundance out there, they have to buy something. And that something that they buy is U.S. Treasury debts, which is sending the United States on an unsustainable debt path. This is the major problem. The Fed will need to find something to buy that's not a U.S. Treasury. What could they possibly buy? The debt of a foreign nation. They already have the legal authority to do it. This is something that we learned about years ago in a Ben Bernanke's speech talking about deflation and how to prevent it from ever occurring here. Okay. Roll these windows down a little bit here. All right, moving on. Man, yeah, my great grandma had to end up living on 8 Mile in a trailer. It's unimaginable, right on all-nighter, to me that people think a poker machine will allow them to win riches. The odds are so ridiculous. Yeah, they really are. The problem facing the world is wealth inequality is too much to ask others to share, like damn greedy MFers. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, if you have ever increasing amounts of debt issuance and dollar issuance, you're going to have ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor. The problem is that if you don't have ever increasing amounts of debt issuance, then you have a collapse of the system and everybody falls into depression. So which one do you want? Do you want inequality where the rich get richer, or do you want everybody to be suffering in pain and misery and suffering the consequences of a collapsed system? Like, which one is it that you want? I mean, me personally, I don't really care at this point. Like, I will take either one of those and I will go down whatever path it needs that we are headed down, and I will try to conduct myself in the most appropriate fashion I see for what it is that's taking place out there. But the majority of the people probably have no clue about what it is that they would be doing during an economic collapse or a financial collapse of the entire system, which would then narrow the inequality somewhat and make more people on an equal level playing field, but we would all be suffering the consequences of not having anything to eat, and the famine and the depression and the, no medical attentions, and none of that stuff would be happening. Right? I mean, which one do you want? Do you want inequality or do you want a collapse of the system? Those are the two options. That's it. There's nothing else. And I guess some people would probably want a collapse of the system. I mean, why not? Everybody suffers along with them. Simon is on point with all his info. Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And, I mean, the thing is that I've come out here and studied this so much, and I've had so many people ask me questions and do the research and do the, bring together the theories, that the more I go over the information, the more I deliver it, the more I realize, man, I am not deviating from what it is that I have said. Like, I am sticking to, not just out of spite, but sticking to what it is that I have been saying for years, because this is still in my view. Like, nothing has changed. As other people say, oh man, the Federal Reserve's causing hyperinflation. I'm like, okay, how about all those people who were saying that the Fed was causing hyperinflation? Where are you today? Where are you today? Because all those people who believed in the hyperinflationary scenario coming from the Federal Reserve and positioned themselves to deal with that are now having to suffer the consequences of taking that position, since we are not facing hyperinflation. I never once ever believed that the hyperinflation was coming from the Federal Reserve's money printer go brr. Right? Never once did I believe that. I believed everything that we were experiencing had to come from a supply chain breakdown. Lumber being a great indicator of that. And the more I recognized that they were using the inflation expectations of the people, especially the hyperinflation, to raise the neutral interest rate, which is actually regaining the Fed's ammunition, I thought to myself, man, they are falling right into a Federal Reserve trap. Create an inflation expectation that is extremely elevated to raise the neutral interest rate. It worked. It so worked. And even today, as I'm looking at articles and people saying, man, this doesn't make any sense. The Federal Reserve is, they got two different things going on here, and they don't know what to do. And their, left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And all these people disagree with each other. And and I'm listening to all these people try to talk about what it is that they feel that the Federal Reserve is doing. And I'm saying, please just talk about the damn neutral interest rate, because then it would start making a whole lot more sense to you. But nobody wants to talk about that. Like, literally, not a single economist out there that I can find brings that up as the focal point. Saying the Fed is trying to get to neutral. Where's neutral today? Where's neutral based on the inflation expectations being delivered from the credible threat of tariffs? Like, where is it today? That is the most important question that anybody should be asking. Because if that neutral interest rate is rising and the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, the economy is far less restricted than anybody could ever have given it consideration for. And the only thing they talk about is recession and labor market weakness. And I think to myself, no, that's not happening yet. Why it is that people have internalized that as the fear that the Federal Reserve is facing is beyond me, because everything that I see the Federal Reserve is doing is benefiting the top 20% of people. That was the first 10 minutes of this video. Okay? Everybody says, oh man, they don't know what they're doing. I'm like, no, I think they know exactly what they are doing. I mean, if you look to see who it's benefiting and why it's benefiting them, for the reason that they're choosing to benefit those particular people, it all makes sense, right? Elevated interest rates gives the top 20% of the people the purchasing power that they need in order to increase the consumption that needs to take place within this economy, and 80% of the people are not included in that game. And that's that. That is all there really is to it. And all these people who want to try and say, oh man, they're going to be bringing good manufacturing jobs back and all this stuff, they're delusional. They're like, they have no idea. They're like, I mean, I see even economic professors and their articles and the stuff that they write, and I'm thinking, man, maybe they should watch The Uneducated Economist and listen to the Cantillon effect as well. Because once you get it, once you internalize it, once you see it, they won't be talking all that BS anymore. They'd be like, oh man, I guess I do recognize it for what it is. And that's the massive amounts of new money that is poured into the system that has created the major inequality that we now face, does not give the working class individual an opportunity. That is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Once you have an average day job, you're going to have to put in so much more effort beyond that in order to acquire the things that you need to achieve what would have been the American dream, that people aren't going to do it. There is no American dream. It's American nightmare of dedicated every single minute that you have in order to achieve the outcome, and that does not sound fun to most people. Okay? I'm not here to tell you it's going to be fun. I don't think it's like, I mean, to me, I like doing this. This is fun for me, but I understand that the position that my kids are going to have to be in order to acquire the things that they need in their life is going to be even harder for them than it was for me, and it's hard for me now. How can it possibly get any better for them? It's not. Okay? To recognize and say, okay, boys, we need to do something that is going to be so different than what I did in order for you guys to have a decent life. We're going to have to be very strategic, and we're going to have to be very disciplined in making sure that this happens. Okay? And that's the unfortunateness that we now face. What time is it? Alrighty, guys, I got a few more minutes here, and then I'm going to call it quits. All right, you have to understand who the Fed serves. Fed hits nothing but net for those who serve. The inequality is baked in. It's the point of everything. All you can do is position yourself accordingly. Absolutely. Like the moment that somebody says, oh no, they could, they won't. Like I guarantee you, they could do all kinds of stuff. They won't. They won't. Only you can do something different, right? Because they're not going to change. They're not going to change anything about anything that they got going on except the acquiring of more. Just like you want. You want more, right? Maybe you don't personally. Most people do. I know that I want more than I got. I would love to drive this truck for real. This is my dad's truck. This isn't mine. I've been driving around. Feels awesome. Love the new vehicle. Love the feel of everything that goes on. The smell and everything is just awesome about it. I got bigger things in my mind. I got things that I need to do. This truck isn't one of them, but I love driving it around for the couple of days. That's my priority. All right? My priority is I got to position myself accordingly, not go buy a new truck, right? But while I do have the new truck, I'm really going to enjoy it. It's not my truck. It's my dad's truck. I pretend like it's my truck for a couple of days. Perfect, right? I'll give the truck back, and I'll go back and sit in my Suburban again. All right. Nathan, you're getting blocked too. I want more for my family. That's really what I want too. Cheers from Italy, sir. You're a damn right. Well, thank you so much, Ice. I really appreciate it. And hello back to Italy. All right. Those that smoke hash and eat shrooms, hash edibles, are gratefully satisfied, joyful. It's fun getting high all day, every day. Ha ha. Effing love it. All right. All right. They want cheap labor, but more production, so we have a crappy labor force. Everything sucks. I recommend, this is coming from All Nighter, Animal, I recommend being open to our concepts rather than blocking participants typing for your benefit. Yeah. Simon, you have a cool dad. I do. My dad is way cool. Like that, my dad is way cool. Everybody loves meeting and talking with my dad and hanging out with my dad. He is very cool. Simon, you're a wealthy man. I appreciate it. I really feel that way. You know, when you got food, conveniences, and pleasures of life, that's it. That's all you need for wealth. Food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. I don't know what else that I could be doing that would give me any more food, conveniences, or pleasures of life. Like, I guess maybe more money might give me some sort of convenience that I could go for, but I have what I need. Like, I don't know what else in my life that I would really need that would be a need. Like, everything else after what I got is a pleasurable experience. And don't get me wrong, making things a little bit more pleasurable is definitely nice to do. But when you have your needs covered, you don't really think about things that you really need in your life. You just live life, you know? You're helping people that are looking for it. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you, Stephen. And that's really what I am intending for this channel, is to provide something that is helpful and useful and somewhat encouraging for people to then be able to take and recognize for themselves that they can do something in this world, that we are not suffering to the power, right? Like, we don't have to suffer to them. We have our ability to make our own decisions to make our life better, right? And putting that expectation on an external, saying, oh man, they need to do something, is really taking away what it is that you could really be doing for yourself, because you are essentially handing that over to them, saying, here, you guys go do something to make my life better. I'm just going to go show up at my day job. Let me know when you fix it. And it's never going to work. Being born in the U.S. is like winning the lottery versus 2 billion people in India or Bangladesh. I totally agree. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else doing anything other than what I am doing right now, because I feel like I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do, right? Like, do I have all the money in the world? No. Do I drive fancy cars? Well, my dad lets me borrow his, right? I don't have any of that other stuff that's going on in the world that would say, hey man, you got this luxurious experience. But I do have a position in this world in which that I live in one of the most nicest places that you could ever be in the Pacific Northwest, in the corner of Oregon. Like, I cannot imagine living anywhere else in the world. It's safe, it's clean, it's friendly. I know everybody here. Like, this is it. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. The job that I have, the money that I make, it's enough. It's giving me the ability to save. It's giving me the ability to, be in a position in which I can pay my bills on time. Like, I don't stress for anything, and when I feel myself stressing about stuff, I have to reflect on it, saying, dude, you don't have problems. Any problem that you are thinking of, you are creating it in your own mind, because there's people out there who have some serious problems and you ain't one of them. Right? And I have to tell myself that every day and recognize it, that the things that I have done with my life to position myself the way I have in order to provide for my family was a lot of work. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of effort and energy and understanding of what it is that I need to do to be disciplined to acquire what it is that I have. And I think to myself, man, that was tough. Right? But it's here. I mean, I'm doing it. I didn't think that I had this in me at one time. I didn't know that it was even possible. Didn't believe it was possible. In fact, convinced myself that it was other people who were preventing me from acquiring this. And then one day I just let it all go, or I tried to. And I said, man, I need to start making better decisions. And when I started focusing in on myself, saying, okay, it's not their problem, although as much as I would love for it to be their problem, it's not their problem. This is my problem. And if I own my problem, then I can deal with my problem. And the more I owned it, the more I realized, man, I can deal with my problems, but I cannot deal with the external problems. There's some things on this world that I just cannot change. And to be able to accept that was one of the most difficult things that I had ever done. When I realized that there was things that I could change in my life, and I was able to recognize it and hopefully have the power to recognize that, I was able to start making good decisions for myself. When I started making those good decisions for myself, it took time, but I found that every day it was getting just slightly better than the day before. And even now, it's just like, I hope to have the power to make the next right decision. That was it. That changed my life. That was everything in my life that changed, was that. Are you in Cali, Simon? Nope, I'm in the northwest corner of Oregon in a place called Astoria. I love living in Portland, Oregon. Right on, Kirk. I love living in Astoria. My dollar stretches a lot more overseas. Yeah, I bet it does, MRider777. Like, the only people who really seem to hate the dollar is the United States itself, like, and a few of these BRICS nations, but everybody else in the world loves the dollar. Like, I've traveled to tourist locations, Mexico, Jamaica, and, other places, and no matter what, like, everybody loves American money. You know, they all want the dollar. What time is it? Nope. Okay, I got one more question I'm going to read and then I'm going to go. Okay, it comes from Animal Kingdom. The fact that there's homeless veterans and rich family kids able to inherit multiple properties just being born is beyond cruel. Yeah, Animal Kingdom, I totally admit it. It's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. And it's kind of cruel in a way. Yeah, I agree with that. But guess what? This reality of this world is cruel and it's not fair. Accept it. It's cruel and it's not fair. It's never going to be fair and it will always be cruel. And to hope and wish and dream that someday it isn't like that, you're going to be wishing for the rest of your life for that moment that will never ever come. All right? The world is cruel and it is unfair and it always will be. All right. If Portland didn't stink like patchouli, yeah, there's a lot of hippies. There's a lot of hippies in Portland. You know, a lot of that. You know, kind of. What would they call it? Like, like I met a couple of girls at bingo last night, and somebody described them as festival girls, and I thought, yeah, that's a good description. You know, like kind of that hippie, go with the flow, everything's a party. No, don't stress me out, man. Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing. All right. That is some black pill takes by UE. Whatever, call it what you will. Like, I don't label it. I don't label anything. I don't label myself in any way. Like people say, man, what kind of political party are you affiliated with? I'm not. I'm not affiliated with a political party. Not one at all, right? I would like to think of myself as a libertarian, but sometimes I even wonder if that's the case, right? Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that. I would like to think that I'm a freedom-loving, constitutionalist, libertarian-minded person, but I even wonder when I hear some of the things that are being stated out there if that's even the case. Okay? I'm an anarchist at heart. I believe that we can govern ourselves. I don't think that government is needed. Right? And that's me personally. Other people get scared as hell when they hear that. Oh, no, we have to have government. And I'm like, well, so goes the problems, you know. All right. I gotta go, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We got quite a few people who were watching there. I saw it up at 360 at one point. 323 people watching with 101 likes. Hurry up and go hit that like button. By hitting that like button, you'll get the YouTube algorithm to grab this video, spread it around for more people to join in. We can keep this conversation going. I think what I have triggered on as far as the identifying of the Cantillon effect, how the top 20% of people are the consumers, how we are a consumer-based economy, and what it is that the powers that be are going to focus in on in order to keep the economy going is literally the consumers. And if the consumers are only at the top 20% because the bottom 80% of the people are debt saturated and don't have a good job because a good job sucks nowadays, then there is literally nothing they can do for the majority of the people. They're going to be focused in on the top 20%. How this plays out over time is anybody's guess. The problems that could increase because of it, the more inequality, the harder it is to acquire property, all the other things that come from it. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that can be had because of that. But understand that you can position yourself to take advantage of it, right? And that's the key to it all, is that you can take a position to be in an advantageous condition, right? Like you could take that position. And I don't know what it is that you need to do. I've tried to share what it is that I have done. It's not like I'm like killing it out there, being it, you know, making all kinds of money and just rolling it in and bragging about it or anything. But I am able to pay my bills on time. And that was something that I was never able to do at one point in my life. And to be able to share how it is that I was pulling myself out of the gutter, out of debt, buying a house, buying into stocks, buying into a position in which that I have a savings, and, you know, being able to do it at this time when most people don't think that you can, right? Living proof. Homeless carrying cans, you know, it's all happening now, right? Like you can witness it everywhere. I mean, this poor girl just walked past me, right, carrying cans while we're out here talking about the inequality of what's going on. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.